Portions of this episode of the Upper One podcast have been previously recorded.
And now podcasting from the great state of Alaska, this is the Upper One podcast.
Pretty sick, huh?
Thanks for joining me for this episode of the Upper One podcast. This is episode 40. And as I stated in the snippet, I said that portions of this are pre-recorded because I'm taking care of the update portion that I do beforehand, because I have a guest / host that's going to be doing the episode for me or with me. And the episode's going to be on a town or village in the northwest section of Alaska where he is from, that I believe has some significance in our history of the state. So that's why the little different in format today. But to get started, 3 years ago, I made a post, and actually it's 3 years ago to date, January 5th, 2021, I posted red, white, blue, and in capital letters, gold, baby. First shutout in medal round game in the U.S. history. Our Team USA juniors hockey team won the gold 3 years ago today, and they won it. They beat Sweden again today and in that tournament, and they won the gold. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, you remember on a previous episode, I talked about my friend Bobby Hill going to Germany and competing in the Special Olympics World Games, where he brought back a gold and 3 silver medals. Well, he's finally, so there's some history behind this little segment. He's finally getting inducted into the Alaska Sports Hall of Fame. Well-deserved. A pillar of the sports community in Alaska. He's an Alaska Aces Hall of Famer. He attended every single Alaska Aces home game. Now that we don't have him, he's attending the University of Alaska Anchorage hockey home games. He's been to, like I said, 3 world games, basically the Special Olympics, and he's competed in Ireland, Shanghai, and now Germany, so it's well-deserved, Bobby. I'm happy for you very much. And so anyhow, the reason why, along with the Hall of Fame induction, the Alaska News Source, which is a couple of TV stations here, our NBC affiliate, Channel 2, they did a kind of a year in review, top sports moments of 2023. And Bobby bringing home those medals from Germany was number 2, only second to a basketball player. I think her name was Alyssa Peely. I don't remember her first name 100%, but I know it is Peely. She plays for the University of Utah. She was number 1 because they came up here and they won the Alaska Shootout over on the UAA campus. So Bobby is close enough to me. That's number 1. Hall of Fame induction's a little bit more important to me than a tournament, just 1 year tournament thing. But anyhow, so Bobby's going to be in the Hall of Fame. And the reason why I brought this up, not only because he's my friend and it's well deserved, but years past, I think they changed their format, but years past, you can go on each year and you can vote for, an individual or a group or a moment in Alaska sports history to be inducted. And they gave you a list. Well, now they changed their format. It's all weird from what I remember before. And Bobby has always been on there, and I have always gone on, and I've always voted for Bobby, hoping that one day he would be in there. Now he is. And not that I'm wanting to be in it, but I could be. My senior year in high school, we lost the state championship, basketball championship, to East High School, which turned out Trajan Langdon, who played for Duke and then went on and got drafted by the Cleveland Cavaliers. He and I are good friends. I mean, we're not like best friends, call each other, hang out every day, but we're on that level where we're friends, and I can't say we're close, but anyhow, that game was a triple overtime game. They beat us 92-90, and that was one of the moments that the Hall of Fame, Alaska Sports Hall of Fame, had as to be voted on. So, like I said, I could be a part of that too, with my team and the East High School team. So that's kind of where I was going with that, but no big deal if it ever came to it. So, and again, another snow story. We set a snowfall record as of January 4th, 2024, of 82.2 inches for the year. When you break one record early in the season and you keep getting more snow for the rest of the winter, you're going to break records, right? But anyhow, so 82.2 inches. In the United States, any major city that gets snow, this is the most snow in a major city that is not in a mountain, up in the mountains, like Denver. Denver's in the mountains. Pikes Peak, all those that are in mountains where you should get snow. Where I live here in Eagle River, I'm at like 810 or 12 feet above sea level. I don't know exactly what Anchorage would be because, we do have little hills and creeks and stuff, but I don't know what the official altitude for Anchorage is. But we're surrounded by a mountain range, but we're not a mountain city. So that set a record for the most snow in a major city that is not in a mountain. Some other news, as we just surpassed the 5th anniversary of the November 30th, 2018 7.1 earthquake that happened at 8:29 in the morning, Alaska time. Japan had an earthquake on the 1st of January. I don't know, they change the magnitude all the time. I mean, weeks later, they can come back and change the magnitudes. So I was seeing 7.5 or 7.6, which happened 4 p.m. local time in Japan. I bring that up, like I said, because of our 5-year anniversary of our earthquake. I did see that there was like 62 people killed, which is unfortunate. I think the 64 earthquake here, there were hundreds, but that was a 9.2. If you remember, back in March of 2011, there was a 9.1 in Japan. So the 9.1 earthquake, the epicenter was on the Pacific Ocean side, which would be the east coast of Japan. That one, if you remember the Fukushima nuclear power plant, it had a meltdown. So there was some stuff going on with that. I don't remember, water tables and stuff getting contaminated or whatever. But the reason why I bring that up is because this one was on the Sea of Japan side, which is the body of water between Japan and Korea. And the article that I read, there was the little video of interviews and stuff of people. It said there near that epicenter, there is a power plant called the Shika nuclear power station. But they said, fortunately, that power station was shut down before this quake happened. So they're not expecting any fallout from that nuclear power plant. Here's some more hockey news. So, when you get, and I've talked about it before, you get 3 goals in one game, it's called a hat trick. And like in the NHL, In the ECHL, when the Aces were playing, if somebody got a hat trick, you throw your hats out on the ice. And that player that scored the hat trick will, most of the time, will sign those hats for the fans that threw their hats, and then somehow they would get them back. Well, there's also another hat trick in hockey, and it's called the Gordie Howe hat trick, and it is called the Gordie Howe because of Hall of Famer Gordie Howe. He was pretty infamous about, maybe it's famous, about getting a goal in a game, getting an assist in a game, and getting into a fight. So a goal, an assist, and a fight are called the Gordie Howe hat trick. And I don't know if I'm proud to say it or sad to say it, because it didn't happen. I did not get in a fight. I did get a goal. I did get an assist, but in one of my most previous games, I almost had it, because during the second period, the team we were playing, our league is co-ed, so females can play in our league and play on teams. And, we are a non-contact, so there's no, favoritism or expecting people to hit or, having to avoid. So it's a non-contact league. Well, during a play, one of the females on the opposing team and we were trying to chase down the puck, which was up against the boards. Well, she was a little bit in front of me, and she went down. I don't remember how or what the situation was. I wasn't anywhere near her. I didn't even get my stick out to touch her. But she went down, and I noticed one of her legs kind of went in an awkward position, and I was concerned. I know, it's sportsmanship, and I was concerned, and I didn't want to see her hurt. So I had slowed down before I even got close to her, and I stopped because the play was going back the other way. And I had asked her if she was okay, and she kind of, I could tell she was kind of a little distraught, but she didn't sound like she was in pain, but she let me know, yeah, I'm okay. So I proceeded to go down the ice. I don't remember if it was that same shift, which in hockey, a shift is when you go on the ice, your shift is over when you come back off and sit the bench and then await your next turn. So on that shift, I don't remember if it was the same one or not, but the play had happened. And as a wing, when the opposing team is trying to score on your goalie, the wings cover the defenseman up on the blue line. And I was covering a defenseman on their team who happened to be one of my teammates from last year. Well, I'm not saying I didn't get along with this guy. We talked, we were very cordial, but I'm not a fan of his. Let's just say that, being nice. Because he's very arrogant. He's very narcissistic. So I'm not a fan. Well, you don't sit still when you're in hockey. You have to keep moving. You always try to, you try to cover a shooting lane or cover a passing lane or something. But if the puck's not near you, you just kind of keep moving. Like in basketball, if you're sitting still, you're going to get covered and guarded, and nothing's going to happen. You're not going to get the ball. So when he had the puck, he passed it down along the boards back towards the net. And so I just did a glide turn and turned around, and I was probably 2 or 3 strides away from him with my back to him. And he came up from behind and he cross-checked me, which is you turn your stick basically horizontally with both hands on it, and you extend your hands with your stick out. And that's a cross-check if you hit somebody. And he did. He cross-checked me from behind, and I went down. Well, the referee, that was the younger kid. I'm going to be nice. I'm not going to say the word or the phrase that I would call him normally, but being young, let's just put it this way, being young, he's younger than the other guy, so he would be the kid, right, or the baby. So it has to do with diapers wrapped around a certain part of his anatomy. And President Nixon's nickname is the other word. So anyway, so that diaper, you know what, didn't make the call, and I asked him why, and he kind of shrugged it off. And so I was a little upset, and we were beating this team pretty good. We ended up beating them 4-0. So I was going to, so we had a 2-week off break for the Christmas and New Year's holiday. I was going to be a little vindictive, I guess, or, I was going to be an a-hole, and I was going to, should the situation arise, I was going to retaliate. Let's just put it that way. Well, as I was going to the bench after this said cross-check, me and him got in a verbal altercation, and he yelled at me, says, "Don't you ever put your hands on any of my women teammates," or something along those lines. I don't remember any swear words until I yelled at him back. Anyways, we were yelling at each other. And like I said, a Gordie Howe hat trick is a goal, an assist, and a fight in the same game. But that has to be documented on the score sheet, right? Well, my goal and my assist were documented. And if you really technically want to say my yelling or us yelling back and forth at each other, a yelling match is kind of a fight. So technically, minus it being on the score sheet, technically I did have a Gordie Howe hat trick, but officially I did not. So almost, I get long-winded in saying this, but almost had my Gordie Howe hat trick. So some happy news finally after like 8 years of being together. My stepson, Teddy, the youngest, he spent Christmas in Florida, because they're in the process of moving back. Teddy's been up here working, but he went back. Taylor has a job, his girlfriend, down there, and they spent Christmas Eve or Christmas Eve day or something at SeaWorld, and he ended up popping the question. So Teddy is engaged, and I know that they're looking at some wedding venues somewhere in Tennessee. I'm pretty excited about that because the one wedding venue that I know of that they're looking into is 8.9 miles away from the Sugarlands Distilling Company, which is the venue set for the master distiller on Discovery that I watched. So, I'm going to be spending some time down there at some distilleries and looking for some moonshine. All right. One last thing. I know I'm getting long because my buddy, when he agreed to be, he agreed, he thought it would be cool to be a guest for the podcast. And so we've been talking about it, and he sent me a message today saying, hey, I've been thinking about jotting down some ideas and stuff for an hour-long show. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, that's fine. I don't know if it would be an hour, after you do all the editing and stuff, but editing. But yeah, we could go for it. And I've got a list written down of some information too. So, while this first section of the pre-recorded portion of the episode is finishing up, I had one other thing. My wife Shannon and I, last night we were watching Sister Wives of All That, for that matter. We were watching that, and she had mentioned something. I had told her a story at some point, since we've been together, about some of my history, and I'm not so sure I'm embarrassed about it or what, because I was a kid. I was like, it was after my brother was born, so it had to have been 77 or early 78. I don't remember. So, I'm not going to remember everything about it, but My mom would tell me a story from then. So my brother was just born. He was a baby. And we were headed to Buckeye, Arizona. It was my mom and my aunt, and I believe my grandma, their mom, and my brother and me. I don't remember. Like I said, I don't know if my mom even remembers who else was there, but we were headed to Buckeye to go visit my uncle. And because my uncle lived in Buckeye, I think it was Buckeye. It was back then. He like managed a farm, so we stopped in Tucson to go to the mall, go into. My mom can't remember if it was Penny's or Montgomery Ward or Sears or one of them. Something. It was a mall in Tucson. Well, at some point, I got detached and I got disappeared and lost, and so they were running around getting, employees at the store involved and looking for me. And it turns out that I was up in the window. I don't know what I did. I don't know what I was doing. They were looking in the clothes racks. They were looking that I was hiding in the clothes, but I ended up being up in the window, and I must have at some point either knocked it over and tried to fix it or something. But I had, according to my mom, I had pulled the lady's, well, in this case, my aunt, because my mom couldn't remember a lot, but I had pulled the lady's leg and the lady's arm off, or broke them off. So at some point, a mannequin was in the window broken. But Shanna had brought it up because I had told her this story before, and she started going through her memories, and she said, I think I was at that store at that time, because I remember the people looking around for a little boy who was lost. And she said she remembers that because, we're in Tucson. We're, I don't know how many miles away from the Mexican border. And, kidnappings happen. So she remembers, she said her recollection and her memories was that she was glad the boy was found, because there could have been a predator, taking kids and kidnapping them. So that was kind of a funny story after her and I being together, being almost married. We'll be 8 years in March. So 9 years together now, this May. And then she, after telling her that story, now she remembers a similar story and being there that potentially could have been me. So we had somewhat of a connection 40, what is that, 47 years ago, 46 years ago. So, that's that. Now, getting on to almost 25 minutes of gibberish. So here's my first break, and I will come back and introduce my guest/host for my 40th episode. Stick around. All right, so thanks for sticking around. This is episode 40, and as I stated, I did not tell you what this episode was about because I've been waiting. I do have a guest. He's kind of a co-host. He's going to be a co-host because we're going to talk about where he's from, my friend Jarrett from Kotzebue. So this episode is about Kotzebue, Alaska. And the reason why I'm doing it this way, not only because that's where Jarrett is from, but is because I think Kotzebue in the years past, you had the gold mining and the prospectors would just come and flock in places. I think Kotzebue is the central hub of trade between Asia, Russia, and then Alaska once it became a state. So Kotzebue is an Inupiaq village. It's 33 miles north of the Arctic Circle, so everything up there is pretty much tundra. There's no trees. How do you say Kotzebue in Inupiaq?
Kikik-Tugruk.
As I said, Kotzebue is the part of the Northwest Arctic Borough. In 2020, the population was 3,102. October of 2017, it was an all-American city. And as I stated, it is an economic and transportation hub of the region. So they've got 3 rivers that drain into the sound there. So all of the villages that are interior, they come in, and then everybody would come over through the Bering Sea into Kotzebue, and they would do their trading and
Yeah, it's
bartering
really,
and whatever. So
it's probably the biggest village in the surrounding area there. You got Noatak, Kivalina, Kayana. Norvik is actually the closest. It's kind of the central point for all those villages. They don't really have any roads anywhere else besides just recently. They kind of just, for in the wintertime, well, in the wintertime you can travel by snow machine to the other villages.
and I'm going to point this out. You heard him say snow machine. He didn't say snowmobile
Yeah.
like they do in the lower 48.
Yeah.
So I just want to point that out. But boat in the summer,
Yeah.
4-wheelers. I'm sure you guys ride 4-wheelers
Oh,
and
yeah,
stuff all
sure.
up and down the coastline and the beaches.
That's probably the main source of transportation up there.
What about, like I said, with the trades, furs, jams and jellies and stuff made out of?
Oh, sure. They make it too up there. Not in Kotzebue, but maybe the surrounding villages. They still have VHFs that you get on. It's like a CB. Everybody's on the same channel.
Right
you
on.
get on there, and I got fry bread at this house
Okay.
for sale. But Kotzebue, well, there's a radio station up there too, and people, as far as fur and other things go, there's baleen, ivory. There's people. They have ivory shops up there. They make utekluks, it's a dress, native dress.
Is that like pretty similar to a...
Cussbuck. They make drums out of seal skin. I've got friends up there who are part of the Northern Lights dancers.
Nice.
My little sister, actually, she was a part of the Northern Lights dancers up there.
Oh, that's cool. They most recently had a TV show. It was called Alaska Daily. It was Hillary Swank. She was a reporter. And
Right.
some of the stories was about how indigenous women were not being reported. Crimes were not being reported against them. So it centered around focusing on that story. Well, they went into a village, and their community hall, they were in there teaching dance. And I got another story about this guy when we get down to some of the other stuff here. But a high school teammate of mine is, I don't know where he stands status-wise in the village of Point Hope, which is just right across the way from you guys. It's not too far. But his name is Jeff Kinnevac. He was a senior my junior year. We played basketball together, and he was one of the guys in there teaching dance. They had the drums, and you could hear him do the dance. And just while we're on the subject of dance, we went to Juneau my senior year, and some of the local natives down there, they put on a little presentation while we were at the school before the tournament started. And one of the things they do, I believe, like you said, is we talked off mic, was traditionally you kind of, even as an outsider, you get accepted into your community or your village.
Yeah.
Rite of passage with the blanket toss. Well, I think it's a pretty big tradition, and it means a lot to the locals when they're up singing and dancing these, that they invite you to dance and you get up and dance with them.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And so
They love
did
it
that.
up there when people from outside of town, when they come in and they go up and voluntarily start
Right.
start
So that's what
dancing.
happened down there. And but anyways, my buddy Jeff was on that show, and like I said, I'll get to him a little bit later. But like we had said, just the Noatak, the Selawik, and the Kobuk rivers all run and drain into the Kotzebue Sound, which again formed the center of transportation to the points inland. Kotzebue being the trade center for interior villages and inhabitants of the Far Eastern Asia, which is now the Russian Far East. As we say, we could see Russia from our house.
Yeah.
The locals in the trade community down there, they traded furs, seal oil, hides, rifles, ammunition, and seal skins. And then also Kotzebue used to, or I don't know how much it still is, they were the gathering center for the World Eskimo Indian Olympics.
Yeah.
The trade center expanded with the arrival of the whalers, the traders, the gold seekers, and the missionaries. As we said, Kikik Tugruk roughly translates into small island or resembles an island. And I think we've talked about this in the past, is if you're standing up there, you can kind of see that there's water all around it.
Yeah. When you're up, there's The closest hill is called Cemetery Hill. It's when you get up there in the tundra and you look down at the town, and there's the runway is surrounded by water. The whole town is just a strip of land basically, and surrounded by water.
Kind of similar to the Homer Spit, where it just kind of protrudes.
Yeah.
A sandbar protrudes out into the
Yeah.
water.
Yeah.
We talked about off mic was that how Kotzebue got his name, and Jarrett, he just snapped it off. I didn't even have to say the guy's
Otto
name.
von Kotzebue.
Otto von Kotzebue, who was a Baltic German explorer.
Yeah, that's well known around the town.
He was looking for the Northwest Passage because they were trying to find an easier trade route to the Far East. And so that's why Otto von Kotzebue was included in some of our history, just like Captain Cook.
Yeah.
A little bit of a timeline. I don't know how much you know about this, but Alaska didn't become a state until 1959. On a previous episode, I don't have my notes in front of me, so it's not right off the top of my head. I talked about William H. Seward and when they proposed the purchase of Alaska, when all that went in through Congress. I don't remember the dates because I talked about it before, but well before, like 60 years before Alaska became a state, Kotzebue got its first post office in 1899. The first U.S. post office was established there. The Kotzebue Air Force Station was completed. They put a radar site in 1958. They deactivated that in 1983. I think you said there are still some buildings and armories and some stuff, I'm sure. There is an actress named K.D. Lang. In 1990, they filmed a movie called Salmon Berries there. It was mostly shot in Kotzebue. In 1997, 3 of the wind turbines were installed up there, so they've got their own power.
Yeah.
It is the northernmost wind farm in the United States, and as of today, which I don't know when that article was, but as of today, there's 19 turbines up there. Our most current governor, Mike Dunleavy, was sworn in Kotzebue in 2018, and you said he used to be the principal?
Yeah, he was my principal up there. It's
nice. I know he was, when I first heard of him, he was mayor or something out here in Wasilla. So
yeah, he's a good guy.
So he was supposed to, initially he was supposed to go out to another village and get sworn in, but because of weather, they just did it in Kotzebue. Kotzebue lies on a gravel spit at the end of the Baldwin Peninsula, 33 miles north of the Arctic Circle. You did say that there was a tree?
There was a tree way back in a long time ago. That somebody chopped it down. It was the only tree in Kotzebue. They call Kotzebue a national forest, and there's one tree there.
Wow. With Kotzebue being on that Norton Sound and the Baldwin Peninsula right there, they are the gateway to the Kobuk Valley National Park. The climate up there, like we were just talking with above the Arctic Circle, is called considered a dry subarctic climate with long, somewhat snowy and very cold winters, short, mild summers, but somewhat snowy, meaning you guys are on the coast. Obviously, they built the wind turbines there to supply energy.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a lot of wind.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And I imagine, like I said, the cold, very cold winters, that wind just brings all that cold.
Oh, it gets minus 60 below up there.
Right.
I mean, it's especially with that west wind. And yeah, it's cold and miserable 8 or 9 months out of the year. And the short summers that we do have, you just want to get out and go upriver, go boating,
right.
Go hunting. Well, you can.
I did read that the record high on record was 85 degrees. I imagine it's probably
that's hot for Kotzebue.
Low 60s probably in the summertime.
Yeah,
maybe.
average low 60s.
And then the record low was minus 58. And I was talking with my dad the other day because there's been a storm going across the country in little spurts. We're in the southwest New Mexico, which is pretty much right where I'm at. We're still on the Continental Divide, so we're at the bottom of the Rockies.
Okay.
We're still high desert. So they do get 20-degree temperatures in the wintertime and sometimes only in into the mid-40s during the day. And this last storm, he said, yeah, we didn't get much like they were talking, but we did get the wind. And I said, oh, I bet that was cold. He's like, yeah. And I said, well, could you imagine it being, 10 degrees and then a 50-mile-an-hour wind? That wind chill makes it probably 60 below or 40 below or whatever it is. And he's like, no, I don't want to imagine. And so,
with the wind chill factor,
right.
It can get pretty cold.
Some other things, I think, life growing up as a kid, like you said, there was no established police force. So I imagine there was some ruckus being made.
Yeah,
There was
well,
probably, kids getting themselves into somewhat little trouble. And,
there's really no form of recreation in the town. You got to make your own fun up there, I guess.
Right.
And a lot of the kids, yeah, you get into mischief. It's easy to fall into.
right. And I'm sure there's bullying.
Yeah.
Kids trying to establish dominance and
I
just being
dreaded.
kids.
I was living in Washington too, as my dad's side of the family is from down there, and we'd travel back and forth. And I dreaded going back to Kotzebue and having to face everybody at
Right.
school and stuff.
Well, I know you said you haven't really lived there in 15 years, but we have spoken. I guess you going back and forth to Washington, coming down here, you really didn't have much of a culture shock with
No.
bigger cities and having more to do. And
Yeah, well, I was 3 or 4 years old when I moved out of Kotzebue, and so I was still I didn't really know what was going on yet.
Right.
It was kind of just
so you kind of grew up like I did. You didn't have to. I mean, granted, the ranch life. I didn't grow up on a ranch. We were there, but you still have to find your own way. You have to, sometimes you have to build your own stuff.
yeah.
And just a couple more things, and I think we can wrap this up. There's some notable people here that are from Kotzebue or that live in Kotzebue, and I'm going to start with the first one. The biggest thing up here in Alaska is the Iditarod.
Mhm.
And in 2011, the Iditarod champion was John Baker. He is from Kotzebue, and I'm sure you guys, it was a
Oh yeah.
pretty big deal.
We're all really happy, really proud to have somebody in the Iditarod representing Kotzebue.
So, and this is a joking, but do you think that the Iditarod winner for years, as long as I've been in high school and been up here, the Iditarod winner won a Ram truck as part of his winnings.
Mhm.
But do you think he got the Ram truck here in Anchorage? So
Probably.
maybe when he finished under the Burl Arches in Nome, he just kept the dog sled team going back on up to Kotzebue.
Yeah, it's a possibility.
Okay, that was a joke. I was being funny. There is an author that named Catherine Keith that I think lives there. I don't know if she's originally from there, but she wrote a book called Epic Solitude, and I imagine it's about life in a barren land and tundra.
I hadn't heard of that, but I'll probably check it out.
One other guy, I'm gonna go in some of his accomplishments first before I go into who he was. Or in the 70s and 80s, he was a pretty big name in the World Eskimo Indian Olympics, and I believe that's probably what got him 2 times. He went on Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show, twice, but he was represented the region in Kotzebue in our Alaska House of Representatives. His name's Reggie Jewell. I don't know how much you knew about him.
No, I'd always heard the name growing up. I don't know a lot about him, but he's apparently one of the tribal council leaders up there.
Right. And like I said, he's probably growing up as a kid before you get into government stuff, you probably knew about him more doing the high kicks and the, and the ear, what is it they call the ear pull, the ear tug, where you're pulling the seal skin from your ear. It's like a tug of war, right? I don't remember the name of it, but one other, and he's probably not as popular, but there is a local professional wrestler from the town of Kotzebue. He's billed from Kotzebue. He's born in Kotzebue. His name is Jet Lucas, and we could talk about that guy another time.
Yeah. No, the Goo Goo Dolls have made a trip to Kotzebue before, and they played a couple songs out there. Anytime a celebrity comes into town, that's a huge thing up there.
Just a few more. I mean, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
If you could travel back to a specific moment in time, which era would you choose?
Ancient Egypt.
Ancient Egypt, like Cleopatra, King Tut, something back there. Just
it's
maybe watch them build the pyramids and see how they actually really built them.
Yeah.
One of mine would be the very first time Jackie Robinson stepped onto the baseball field in the major leagues. I think
All
I
right.
would like to see that.
Right.
Where is the furthest you have traveled by car?
My grandpa was a truck driver in an 18-wheeler when I was a little kid, and we would drive around the country, and so I've been to a lot of states. I don't remember all of it. Like, I remember pieces of it, but I remember being in Texas and Iowa and Chicago. And
So did he have the sleeper?
yeah,
sleeper in the
yeah, we
back
would
and-
sleep in the cab in the back.
Yep. Oh, that's funny you say that. I'm a truck driver as well, and I've done that. I've been across the country. Well, not the whole entire, but I just barely touched across the Mississippi a little bit. But for me, it was driving from here to New Mexico.
Oh, wow, from here.
From Anchorage, I drove. I stopped in Vegas for a few days because the PBR Professional Bull Riders World Finals was going on. So I stayed there and spent some time with my mom, and then I ended up driving to New Mexico. The longest trip in one day that I ever did was 1,167 miles.
Wow.
It was from, if you look at I-15, I think it goes down to San Bernardino and into LA, but it comes up through Vegas. It goes over into Utah and then straight up into Calgary in Alberta.
Yeah.
But I-15 is the U.S. Well, Lethbridge is the last town in Canada before you cross the border. And I stayed the night there, and I drove all the way to basically St. George, Utah, which is pretty much right before you go into Nevada. It was 1,167 miles, and I did it in about 17 hours.
Wow.
I got up at probably 3 or 4 in the morning and got in at like 8 at night. So that was a long trip, but it was 85 miles on that interstate. So
Well, I've been up and down the Alcan a few times from here in Washington. So yeah, it's a lot of fun.
one thing about Jared and I, we are pretty passionate wrestling fans.
Right.
That's why I kind of mentioned the professional wrestler who's from Kotzebue. But this one is in all time. Let's just go back to as far back as you can remember, or anything you might have watched, old school. Mm-hmm. Who is your favorite or least favorite ringside commentator?
Bobby Heenan, right off the top, is probably one of the best, funny guys on the mic,
Right.
on the commentating. Him and Gorilla Monsoon, they just mesh so well together, and I just love hearing them.
That was going to be mine too. Was that duo of them? I would put Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler up there with them.
Yeah, the next generation.
Right, because they were that next generation. I tell you, when they had Macho Man when he was hurt and they put him on the microphone, I think he would have been a color commentator, a very good
and
commentator.
Piper.
Roddy Piper too. They knew how to tell a story.
Yeah,
They knew how to entice the crowd.
Mm-hmm.
They knew this and that. Just kind of going off subject of wrestling, but did you know that the Macho Man was a baseball player?
Yeah.
The next one, who has the best or worst submission move?
Well, the sharpshooter, obviously, is one of the best. It's just cool how he does it.
Right.
He hooks the legs around and bends you back.
Bends you over kind of in that Boston crab with your legs twisted like a reverse Boston crab figure four leg lock. And
the Boston crab is a good one, too.
Yeah.
And the figure four leg lock. Those are all moves, you do to your siblings.
Right. Are you a Morgan Freeman fan?
Sure.
What is your best Morgan Freeman movie all time?
I would have to think about that.
He's my favorite actor.
I would say Shawshank Redemption.
That's my top movie right there too.
Mm-hmm.
As you can see, Jared and I have a lot in common. What is your favorite historical movie?
Titanic, right off the top. When it came out, it was the biggest movie that ever came out. And
Right.
It was two at the time. It had the VHS tapes, and
Right.
you couldn't fit the whole film on one tape.
Yeah. For me, like I said, I mentioned Jackie Robinson earlier. I'd go back to that time.
Mm-hmm.
42 is one of my favorites.
Okay.
I like that one. There's a few others, like Remember the Titans was a good one because that was where the even though segregation and Dr. King and all that was earlier, even back in the 70s in Virginia and all them, they were still having problems, but brought them together. Speaking of Morgan Freeman being my favorite actor, Denzel, he's right up there with Morgan Freeman. But
Sure.
when Will Smith portrayed Ali, that was a good one for me. So stuff like that where you may not get the whole truth, like I said, you may not get the whole story and how they really were.
Right.
Elvis, to this most recent Elvis
Yeah.
one. Maybe they didn't portray him as much like they should have, but at least this is stuff that you might not have known.
Yeah,
So-
exactly. I like that new movie Elvis, and I grew up listening to Elvis.
Back to wrestling. If you could spend a day with a wrestler or superstar, who would it be?
It's hard to say. I mean, Kane has always been my favorite
Right.
of all time, and he's into politics now, so it's like he's one of the smartest guys, in the world.
Right.
So,
I mean, you come in and get, have an athletic career. And
Yeah.
and then you go into something else like that. You have to have something, Jesse Ventura did the same thing. What was the first concert or show you ever attended?
Weird Al Yankovic in Bellingham, Washington. He was my hero growing up. I had every one of his albums. After, Amish Paradise on the Bad Hair Day album, went out and got all the albums.
Yeah, I've listened to him a lot. I've watched. Wasn't there a movie back in the day in the '90s called UHF? I think
Yeah.
had a little bit of him in it. One of my good friends is a DJ at the local rock station here. He was doing a show the other day, and there's that song Betty Davis Eyes.
Right.
And as he was closing the song out, well, let me go back before I get to the song, what I was going to say. But one of his sponsors and some of his job is advertising for local businesses, and one of them is Subway.
Mm-hmm.
When he does the Subway commercials, he's always talking about, now that they came out with these new number systems, the number 6 is the boss. Okay. I've got a little history with this type of sandwich. It's they put pepperoni down,
Mm-hmm.
and then they put meatballs on it, and then mozzarella on the top, and then you get it toasted so it
Mhm.
melts the mozzarella. Well, before that was even on their menu, back in the 90s, so 30 years ago, I was making that sandwich before they even put it across the nation. So, so getting back to Bob, he was talking about doing his Subway ad, and he made, and Bob's a little snarky. He makes off the cuff comments and
Yeah.
stuff, and most of the time he's funny. I find it funny, but some people may not find his humor funny. But it had to do with the meatballs. And so I don't remember exactly what he said. I think my wife was in the truck, so she was like, you know what, he doesn't have a female co-host.
Mm-hmm.
I would do so, go off or something. And then later he plays this Betty Davis Eyes song. And then as he closed it out, he said, well, I'm thinking Betty Crocker Thighs, right? And so I sent him a message. I said, you're in Weird Al parody waiting to happen, right? With me talking about swinging meatballs and Betty Crocker Thighs. And so that was just a little tie into, your Weird Al. Mine, obviously, my first concert was, I had just graduated high school. I was going to school in Las Cruces. At the Pan Am Center, they had Silk, Shy, SWV, Tag Team, and Belle Biv DeVoe. And I probably only paid $18 for that ticket. It was less than $20. But this was, all these groups in high school I had grown up listening to. But Belle Biv DeVoe being the one that I really wanted to go see because, 9-10 years earlier they were New Edition, and that was one of my one of my favorite little tapes. Have you ever visited a space museum?
No, I haven't.
I can't say space museum, but I have been to Kennedy, the Kennedy launch site and all that over in, I think maybe it would be called a space museum. They've got lots of history in there. So, but yeah, we went out to Kennedy. In 2014, I went to Florida for my son's graduation, and we ended up going up to Kennedy Space Center. I guess it would. I guess you can call it a museum, but. One of the proudest things I have to say, and it's unfortunate, on their spacesuits and their flight suits, they have their patches for the mission.
Mm-hmm.
I walked away with the 2 patches of the 2 space shuttles that didn't come home, the Challenger and the was it the Columbia or whatever, the 2 that didn't make it home. But I have those patches somewhere.
Wow, I'll have to put that on my bucket list.
What is the first movie you remember seeing in a movie theater?
Who Framed Roger Rabbit? I just remember a piece of it, just walking into the theater. My uncle took me.
I think mine, I was really little. Back home in the town we had a small theater. It was Bambi. That's as far back as I can remember. And I don't know if my timeline's off a little bit, but as far back as I remember at that theater, whether we were going in or coming out, I remember McDonald's Hamburglar. Somebody in costume as the hamburger outside on the sidewalk. So, what's a historical place you'd really like to visit?
Probably Greece. I'd really go check out the Colosseum there.
If you could only listen to music from one decade, which decade would you choose?
80s, 100%.
Yep, me too. 80s rock. If you personalize your car's license plate, what would the plate say?
I've thought about it, and I've thought about, since the 6 letters, silent, but I'm usually driving down the road blasting music, so I don't know if that would fit well.
How about sports? How many baseball games have you attended?
I've been to a few.
Major League.
Mostly the Mariners.
Yeah.
Because, like we talked about, I lived in Seattle, so I've been right up close with A-Rod back in the day. And,
nice.
And
who's your favorite all-time Mariner?
Probably Griffey.
Like I said, we got a lot in common. Griffey's my favorite. My softball jersey number is 24 because the kid was my favorite. I've been to 2 in all my life. The first one was with my oldest son. Got to watch the Milwaukee Brewers. They beat the Diamondbacks 4-2 back in '99, and then back in 2014, we went to Florida for my oldest son's graduation. Unfortunately, he didn't get to go, but I got to go to my first ever baseball game with my dad. It was the Rays and the Red Sox in Tampa.
Wow.
David Price was pitching. Ortiz was a designated hitter. And my dad, when he got us the tickets, he said, "Where do you want to sit?" I said, "You put us in the right field, outfield." I said, because if Ortiz comes up to bat, he's going to hit it right to us. Well, he didn't. He grounded out. But A.J. Przinsky hit one just 3 or 4 rows down below us. So I chose the right place, just not the right guy.
Yeah.
Is the book always better than the movie, or can you think of some exceptions?
Jurassic Park, it seems like the book, the movie didn't really follow along with the book.
I've got a friend that used to be a DJ here. He's one of my good friends. Actually, because of him, I got to meet John Cena and Chris Benoit and Victoria the first time. One of his phrases, and I've heard him say it on the radio, he's actually down in Idaho now. Books ruin movies. How do you feel about pineapple on pizza?
I'll eat it. It doesn't bother me.
Doesn't bother me either. I like all different kinds of pizza. I'm not a big fish eater, so I don't like anchovies.
Yeah.
None of that. But
yeah.
Let me just get into one more here. I'm just going to do maybe a couple more. This one's from the Would You Rather deck. It said, would you rather have pizza rolls or pizza bagels?
Pizza rolls.
I don't know that I can answer this one because I can't think of it right off the top of my head. But what is the grossest thing you've ever seen someone do in public?
Well, there's a lot of gross things that happen in town. I mean, especially downtown Anchorage.
Right.
I probably wouldn't want to mention it.
With that being said, I don't have anything else for Kotzebue. I mean, everything we have within the state where I could talk about, we could do some research for days, and there's probably little this or little that, but anything else about Kotzebue that might, it's not a tourist destination. It's not going to be.
No.
But just to get to know our state, is there anything else up there? You're isolated.
Uh-huh.
When you get back to the traditional ways, you do your hunting and fishing, you make best of everything.
Right.
You turn antlers into hunting knives and handles, and, maybe even in today, people are fashioning them into door handles and, barn door handles or whatever. Yeah. And the bones are made out of this and that. So,
the reindeer herds run through there. So, you're standing on the beach one day and you just look out and there's a reindeer running by and
right.
in packs, and you get polar bear running through town every now and then, and bears, and they come and they bring a helicopter out there and they bring the bear away from the town.
Right. Like, do they tranquilize it and then get
I think so, yeah.
What about we had talked about, this is where I didn't get back to, I almost forgot about it. One of the things with I think it's probably tribal law or it's a federal law that has to do with the Indian and tribal and native traditions, is if you're don't have any kind of Indian blood in you, you can't whale hunt, or you can't do traditional stuff. And so getting back to my buddy Jeff Kinnevac, I saw him not only on that show, that TV show, but before I saw that, Jim Shockey's one of my favorite hunters of all time. But this is another one of his types of shows where he went out to Point Hope. Because he's a white man, he could not engage in the hunting of the bowheads or the belugas.
Yeah.
But they did allow them to be a part of it, to the filming, and I'm sure later they engaged in some of the eating.
Yeah.
I know in Inupiaq, Muktuk is the bowhead whale,
Mm-hmm.
and Mukta is the beluga.
Mm.
So it's two different. One's Muktuk, the other's Mukta. But
I've tried both. I mean, muktuk is a huge thing up there. They eat it a lot, and there's also ugruk, which is bearded seal that they
Right.
go hunting for, and they'll usually can it and they'll sell it. And I got friends up there who'll just give me a can, and I can drink a whole can of seal oil.
oh, wow,
It's like nothing to me, but yeah, they really like when people who haven't tried it before, they're like, "Have you ever tried muktuk?" It's like, "No." So, well, here, try some.
right. So this show, Jim Shockey was able to watch them, and they took them through the whole hunting process. And so, like I said, I almost forgot to re-mention Jeff again, but well, with that, I think we're pretty much wrap it up. Like I said, you could probably Google a hell of a lot more information than what we talked about today, but unfortunately, half an hour show might turn into an hour if we just keep babbling on. So,
Yeah.
Jared, I really appreciate you coming out.
Oh yeah, thank you.
This was going to be an impromptu episode, and I was going to go to town, but Jared's like, "No, man, I'll just come out to your studio." And now
Yeah.
now he sees what little makeshift studio I have. So I do appreciate you coming out and having fun. And
Well, I appreciate it. And thank you. And I'll come out here again sometime to
yeah,
get the best podcast in Alaska with Big Scott Moore.
thanks. Yeah, but maybe you could turn into going from being a guest to actually being a full-time co-host, or maybe we do another format. But I want to thank Jared again. One thing I forgot to tell him was that of all these last years since I started this podcast, this is episode number 40. I started it with my buddy. It turned out to be me and him. And then after a few episodes, his brother-in-law. So I had two co-hosts. But Jarrett, you are the first guest I've ever had, minus calling people on the phones. Like you said, you are the first sit-down guest that I've had on the podcast, and I really enjoyed it. I want to thank you again. I can't thank you enough. So I hope you enjoy your episode, Jarrett, when you get to hear it. With that being said, let's take my final break and come back to what is the legend of the Goose Creek Tower. Okay, so again, as I said, portions of this episode are previously recorded. This section is too. But as I get into this topic, it's kind of exciting. This is an attraction in Alaska that you can see. Now, before I tell this story, I want you to know, before you come to Alaska expecting to see this, it is on private property and there are no tours. This is not a tourist stop. You can see it by riding the train or flying over in a plane. There's no Fox, there's no Box, there's no Sam, there's no I Am. Okay? So what I'm talking about is the Goose Creek Tower. Now, I've done some research, and there's several stories, and they're kind of conflicting, but at the same time, they kind of coincide just differently with this, one from one story to the other. So the Goose Creek Tower is located, and I looked on the map. It's about halfway between Willow and Talkeetna, Alaska. It's in the Susitna Borough, approximately 25 to 30 minutes from Talkeetna, so you would think that that's about the same into Willow. It is one of America's architectural wonders. Now, the first story that I found, it said the original owner worked on it for 10 years before he died. Then it sat abandoned for 10 years until a new owner purchased it and has started renovations. Well, the next story that I found, it's the same owner, and the reason why it's set without having any work done on it is because he is a trial lawyer and one of the best trial lawyers in the state. So he's always in court and he never has time to work on it. This story says the original owner built the house with a view of then Mount McKinley, now Denali. He happened to build it right after a forest fire, so the trees were all short with the new growth. As time progressed, his view was impeded. He would build another level, which would eventually end up being 185 feet tall, 15 feet shy of federal airspace. Local reporters have found parts of the house were built on the ground and set in place with a crane. There's a basement with an escape tunnel to a safe room. Now here's where the story kind of changes, because it says the original owner was Anchorage attorney Phil Widener. His vision was to put a telescope in the top of the house. He also wants to put in a ham radio station to broadcast radio-free Goose Creek. On a clear day, you can see 300 miles with the 360-degree view, which offers Denali, the Homer Spit, and the start of the Aleutian Chain. The owner considers it a poem in the sky. He doesn't know when it will be finished. Originally planned on a 40 by 40 two-story log cabin, but his mind and engineering degree took over, so he kept adding on, and it kept going up. Depending on how you look at it and which ladder or staircase you climb, there are between 14 and 17 floors. Like I said, because he's a trial lawyer, he's always busy. He's never found time to work on it. That's why it sits empty, but he says when it is done, he and his family will enjoy the tower, mostly so they could watch the Northern Lights. At the beginning, I was rhyming. You could see it from the train. You could see it from the plane. Now they built some of it with the crane. So if you go back and look at the Facebook page with the photo of this episode, you can see why people have dubbed it the Dr. Seuss house. And that's that, or the legend that is the Goose Creek Tower. Well, that was that for episode 40. I hope it was entertaining, educating. I hope it brought some insight to a few other things from the state of Alaska. Please help me out by liking and sharing any of my socials. You could go, I think you could go to each episode. You could share my page, the upper_1_ podcast. That's the number 1. And Instagram, Facebook. I'm still working on the YouTube channel. But again, this was pretty exciting. I'm going on an hour, and I've had a lot of fun. I want to thank my friend Jarrett again. I think we got some more stuff in the future that we're going to try to do, whether he becomes a co-host or we start a new format with a new podcast. So again, Jarrett, thank you so much. That meant a lot to me, and I can't wait to do it again. And thank you all for listening.